From 1609 to 1763, Britain avoided enforcing parliamentary laws in the American colonies because Britain was busy fighting wars. Britain allowed this as long as the colonies stayed loyal to the British Crown. This led to a sense of independence in the colonies, as they weren't as reliant on Britain.
The French and Indian War was an imperial struggle between France and Britain that lasted from 1754 to 1763. Britain allied with Prussia against France, who allied with Spain, Austria, Russia, and the Native Americans. The war resulted in British victory, with French power being removed from North America. The colonists fought on Britain's behalf, trying to win the Ohio River Valley. The French-Indian War helped to unify the colonies.
After the French-Indian War, British Parliament passed the Proclamation of 1763, which prohibited colonists from settling west of the Appalachian Mountains. The British imposed this law on the colonists because they were in debt from the French-Indian War and they did not want to pay for another potential war with the Native Americans because the colonists intruded on their land by expanding west. This angered the colonists because they had just fought a war to gain that land. So some of the colonists settled past the Appalachians anyway because they wanted to. This was a defiant act against British rule.
Passed in 1764, the Sugar Act was designed to raise revenue from the colonies by taxing foreign sugar imported from the West Indies. Colonists didn't respond happily to this and participated in the smuggling of sugar.
The Stamp Act of 1765 was imposed to raise money to pay for the massive British debt acquired from the French and Indian War, and to pay for the new British military force. The Stamp Act required that many printed materials in the colonies be produced on stamped paper produced in London. Both the Stamp and the Sugar Acts provided for offenders to be tried in the Admiralty courts, guilty until proven innocent. The Americans felt that they were being unfairly taxed and denied the rights of Parliament to tax Americans, since no Americans were seated in Parliament. This led to the famous saying, "No taxation without representation."
The Quartering Act was imposed on the colonists in 1765. The act required certain colonies to provide food and housing for British troops. This angered the colonists because they felt as if their rights were being violated. The Quartering Act eventually led to the creation of the Third Amendment of the Constitution.
Founded in August 1765, the Sons of Liberty was a group of revolutionaries led by Sam Adams. They were among the earliest to really have a desire for revolution, and they eventually helped to convince the other colonists of their opinion. They were founded in August of 1765 and played a big role in a pivotal moment for the road to revolution, which was the Boston Tea Party. Their constant pushing for a revolution helped to suggest the idea to reluctant
After
revolution.
the Stamp Act was repealed, Britain passed the Declaratory Act on March 18, 1766. This act outlined Britain's right to govern and tax the colonies as they wished. Colonists did not really have a problem with this because they did not at this point have any desire to rebel. The impact that the Declaratory Act had on the American Revolution was that it led to the passing of the Townshend Acts, which made the colonists mad and pushed them closer to revolution. It also sets the precedent that the British could make whatever rules they wanted for the colonists.
The Boston Massacre of March 5, 1770 was largely misunderstood. Colonists were harassing British soldiers on duty in Boston, so the British shot and killed 5 colonists while injuring 6. The way the news was spread was by a very violent picture showing all of this firepower used by the British and the colonists being shot down. This picture circulated around the colonies and made the colonists mad, even though it has not really happened. This picture was propaganda, but it also made the colonists mad at the British. It was just another step towards revolution because the colonists became even more angry with Britain after hearing of these attacks on their own people.
On May 10, 1773, the British still had debt from the French-Indian War, and taxing the colonists on domestic goods was not quite working out. So they began to tax imported goods like tea. This ignited a spark in them, pushing them towards revolution by getting even angrier with British imperial rule.
The colonists did not like the Tea Act because it restricted them to only being able to buy heavily taxed tea from Britain. So on December 16, 1773, the Sons of Liberty hid their true identities by dressing as Indians, boarding a boat, and dumping the current equivalent of $3 million worth of tea into the river. This enraged the British because they loved the East India Company and their tea. This led the colonists towards revolution because it demonstrated their resistance to British rule, which eventually pushed them further to revolution.
The First Continental Congress met from September 5th to October 26, 1774 to discuss grievances of the colonies towards Britain. The outcome of the meeting was that they decided to boycott British goods once again, and they agreed to meet again. This furthered colonial unity and resistance to British rule, pushing them closer to revolution.